Hey guys, this is my attempt at this week's raw edit. As always, I started off by importing the image into Lightroom. That's what I always do with all my images. I'm probably going to be taking this into Photoshop today. There are some things I want to tidy up in the image before I do my final adjustments to it. So yeah, let's get started. So if you're unaware, you can go to, I think, Photo, Edit In, and if you've got Photoshop or something like that installed in the system, it'll come up here. I've already gone ahead and done this, so if I just move down, and this is the actual image in Photoshop. The first thing I want to do, so I want to get rid of this photo frame in the background. It's serving no purpose, and it's kind of distracting because it's right above the subject, or right behind the subject, so it's catching your eye as well. There are various ways you could go about doing this. You could use the brush tool. I'll make my brush a bit bigger. Bump the brush's opacity up. You can use the Alt key to quickly define your colour, and then I can start painting that down. Excuse me. The only problem I find with this is it'll use that colour from directly down here and from where you sampled all the time. And as you can see, I'll open up this now. Your image starts at this hex colour over here, and it finishes at that. So that's not really a viable option. Although if you've got a solid background colour, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. So what I like to do is use the clone tool. Keyboard shortcut for that is S. It works amazingly for most things, but you've got to make sure you don't fall down to user error. For example, if you're using this with a background and you're cloning and the background's got a pattern, you've got to make sure that you're not repeating the patterns in a natural kind of way. So say for example this was, you had some kind of, I'm trying to think how I could describe it. Say you had some kind of defect in the photo. If you cloned over that and you kept on cloning some bits into the image, it might repeat itself in a non-natural pattern. Does that make sense? Anyway, so using these square bracket keys to make the brush bigger and smaller, I'm going to make it so it's about the same size, maybe a bit bigger than what I want to clone out. Then holding down the Alt key, I'm going to select the sample point just beside what I want to clone out. Hover over it, and as you can see, I'm not clicking at the moment, but you can get a kind of a preview of what's going to happen when you do start your cloning business. So I'm just going to clone all the way down like that. Just done a pretty nice job of that. And then the same thing under the child's ear over here. Now I'm just going to zoom in a bit to tidy that up. Now, one thing I do want to point out is when you're cloning, you've got, as you're painting with a brush tool, you've got the option of using a soft brush or a hard brush, and you can control the hardness here. The difference between these two is going to be extremely apparent here. If I were to say use the same brush but at 100% hardness, I started cloning and I want to get right into the ear here. As you can see, the edge is very, very defined. Whereas on the other hand, if I was to use the brush with the 0% hardness like I've done, I can go right up to the image. Yes, there's going to be some discoloration of the image, but it's so faint so you can use something like a layer mask then to remove that, and that's why I've used it over here. And it's done a pretty good job so far. I'm just going to hold down the Alt key again to define this clone point, and down I come again. When you do work, remember to zoom out the image every now and again, just to make sure you don't get fixated on one point of the image. As you can see, I've zoomed out and I've noticed that there's something that needs to be tidied up beneath the kid's ear. I'm just going to hold that sample point there again. Of course, I'm going to have to make my brush a bit smaller and tidy that up. See, I've done a pretty cack job on that. I'm just going to hold down Alt again and just do a little bit better of a job there. Much better. And the same principle goes for, I'm just going to make that brush bigger again, for editing out these little, I guess, the bits of corn painted on the image. Just hold down the Alt key beside it, make sure your brush is big enough, and just clone over it. Down you go, like that. Just gonna hold like that. I'm just messing about here now, just making sure that I'm tidying up. Okay, and there you've actually removed it from the image itself. One final step that I might use is I'll get myself a bigger clone stamp brush or pan, and then I'll define something from one area of the image like that, and I'll just go, as you can see, I cloned a bit too low there, so as I was moving along it took the child's head off as well, which is not good. So if I do it up here, I'll move across like that, I'll do a bit over there as well, I'll start that again, I go like that, and like that, then the click one here, like that. So you just kind of, you just do it by sampling different bits of the image like that, and you kind of build in a new background for the image. That's one way of doing it. Another way you could do it is under your healing brush section, you could use the patch tool. If you were to just drag, I've done that wrong, sorry about that. I want to get rid of this section of the image, this downward part here. So I'm just going to draw a little sausage shape over that, and then you can, okay, that's why. You do this on the actual image itself. So if I was to go to the image itself and just do like a little sausage selection like that, I could then drag that across, and wherever you drag that selection then is what's going to replace your selection there. So if I hold that, move it a bit to the left, and because this is quite a big image, it'll take some time to do it, and as you can see it's removed the image there as well. It's great when you want to do this, actually works great when you've got blemishes and stuff on the skin. You can work pretty quickly with that, but I myself prefer working with the clone stamp tool. It just gives you that extra bit of control, and you end up with that. Another thing you could do is you could go about cloning out the background of the sofa bit here. I presume it's a sofa. I'm going to keep it in for the purposes of this edit, but you go about doing it in exactly the same way. I'm just going to hide that for a minute, delete that group because I don't need it anymore. And I've actually done this before. I had the image open. As you can see, I simply used the clone tool. I'll actually show you quickly how I did it. Hide that. I duplicated the image to start with. You could work from a new layer, but I decided just to duplicate the image. I'm going to sort out my brush again. Define a stamp or a point to start cloning from, and just cloning again. The beauty here is because using that soft brush again, remember you can go quite close into the actual subject themselves, but remember I'm doing this now without anything on the background here, so I'm going to be cloning the image frame in, so just be careful, be wary when you're doing edits like this. Don't worry if you're going to be going over the kid, show you how to fix that in a minute. And the same thing goes again, you just start cloning out the bits you don't want in the image, like that. This is a pretty quick one. Again, I wasn't paying attention there, I was too busy looking at other things, so I actually cloned in the baby's head into the image itself. And that's not going to work, is it? So I hold that. You get the general idea of what to do. Now to fix this, you'd add a layer mask by layer mask, and apply a new one there. Then make sure you're using your brush tool. You've got white in the foreground to paint it in, and then you'd simply paint over the bits that you've painted in with the clone stamp tool, like so. To make it a bit easier, you can lower the opacity of your mask right down, and anything that does not match the original tone or the image quality, not the image quality, the actual layer before you added it in, you'd simply paint it out like that. Now I'm doing a pretty bad job there, but you would take your time doing that, and you'll end up with a kid on the cool grey background that looks like it's been shot in the studio itself. Now, I mean, it's not 100% perfect, but it's a lot better, I think, than it was before. Now I've got a choice now to either go just the image on the frame like that. I'm actually going to take this one into the image. One thing into Lightroom with me. One thing I did as well was, after I was finished painting out with the layer mask, some of the edges were still a bit bright. So I got myself the brush tool, lowered my opacity to about 10%, and then I selected the colour from right beside, or the closest colour between the subject and the background. So that'd be that kind of colour there. And then, making my brush a bit smaller, I just went about painting the edge of the image in, like so. Only painting the areas that were affected by the previous layer mask. Now you're not going to see too much difference. You're not going to see too much difference, I mean to say, when you're viewing it like from like 16% or 25% like here. But believe me and trust me when I say, it just takes that shine off the hard edges around the image. So I'm just going to delete that. And this is my edit in Photoshop. So what we've done is we've used the clone tool to get rid of any unwanted objects in the image. So I'm just going to hit Control S to save the image. Because we've borrowed the image from Lightroom, it's just going to pour that image back into Lightroom for me now. Yeah, and I'm just going to add a couple more edits in Lightroom then. One thing I would say is be careful, like I mentioned in the video, when you do use the clone stamp tool, that things don't start to look unnatural. Because even users that are not accustomed to Photoshop or photo manipulation are going to know that something's been done to it. Whew, that's a bit of a mouthful. Okay, so Lightroom, I'm not going to do too much to the image here. One thing I do want to point your attention to is the histogram. Now, as you can see here, the image is exposed pretty brightly. The highlights, I guess you call them, and the midtones or the mid-range of the image is pretty decent, but the blacks are literally non-existent. Oh, there you see. I got the images. Oh god, I just made an idiot of myself. Okay. Jesus. Okay, so using the histogram, I know that I need to bump the blacks up on the image. So I'm just going to drag where the blacks are, and if you keep an eye on the black slider here, when the image came into Lightroom, it was at 0. So when I grab the blacks and drag it right across, as you can see, I'm affecting the blacks and I'm affecting the histogram here. So you just keep on playing it and dragging it across like so until you find something that you like. I'm going to keep it at about 45, and if you see the difference from before and after, as you can see, it's brought some boomification and Jared's words back to the image. You can see it's brought really brought out the eyes, and it's brought some nice patterns and details and colours back into the image itself. Excuse me. As for some of it, well, it's 30 minutes. Okay. Exposure. No, white balance. I'm gonna make it. I'm not gonna touch the white balance because I think it's pretty good like it is. I'm gonna probably, and I'm not gonna even touch the tint because I'm pretty happy with how it is at the moment. Exposure. I don't want to take it too bright, or you're gonna, as you can see, if you're looking at the histogram again. If I make it too bright, then I'm totally negating any of the gains I had by manipulating it before. So I might even just take it down a little bit more like that. Recovery. I might bump that up a bit. Remember, as you keep on playing with your sliders, you might find that you need to go back over what you've done before. I'm not going to even touch fill light, am I? Hello, Mr. Fill. No, I'm not going to bother with that. Brightness. Take that brightness up to about plus 17. So we've taken the image from that to possibly something that was maybe a tad overexposed on the face and the clothes, and we've brought it back down. Of course, I might actually make that. Bring that back down. Like that. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. So that's my basic edits done. Tone curve. Let's see, Jared got me hooked on the strong contrasty bit. So let's see if I've got to put that a strong contrast then. Might do that. Do I like that? Like it how it is? There's something about that I really like. There's nothing stopping me playing with the tone curve, is there? Do you know what? I'm actually really liking that. I really am. So if I look at before, after. Yeah, I'm actually really liking that. As you can see, I just noticed now, but it's got a pretty nice detail back in the hair as well. One thing I've not mastered in this is sharpening. It's something that I've not mastered whatsoever. So I'm really not going to be playing with that. I might have to go back and watch some videos to learn how to do that. It's cliche, but do it. I'm going to keep that post crop right until the end. Am I going to do anything else to it? No, I think that's about it. So I might add that post crop in now. Not too much, just enough, and that's it. Is it? Yeah, that's going to be my first. That's going to be my first edit. So I'll call that color. And I think that this image lends itself pretty well to black and white as well. So hit the black and white. Wow, this is gonna. Blacks is going to play so well with this image. So I'll bring my blacks. Wow. It's picking up the shadows pretty nice. The background of the post crop's coming out pretty nice as well. The eyes are still pretty sharp. Might even bring that white balance up or down a bit. Because remember, if you're playing with white balance in black or white, you might not think about it, but it does affect the image as well. I'm going to leave that like that. Brightness down just a tad to about minus 7 from what it was before. I go from that to that. I'm really liking this. I know you're not meant to really like what you do yourself, but will the tint do anything to it as well? So you can see if you take it too far, you're going to be blowing it out. Like that. Wow, this is really standing out. I'm going to do something to the eyes. I might not, it feels wrong doing it to a kid, but at the same time, I want, I'll try it, but I've got no idea how it's going to turn out. I'm going to make my brush size a bit bigger. Anything I do here, I just want it to be really, really subtle. I don't want it to be punchy, like if you were editing like a female or like some kind of fashion shot, then you want the eyes to be punchy because people tend to like that. But I don't know, with this, I don't want it to be too punchy. I just want it to complement the black or white a bit. Okay, as you can see, that's a bit way over the top, so I'm going to bring that down. Is that going to be actually doing anything to the eyes whatsoever? That's the thing. No, it's not, because I wasn't actually editing it well. Okay, zoom out just a little bit from that to that, and I think that's going to be my second snapshot. How much time have I used? 20 more minutes. I'm really, really liking that. I might do another quick one. I might go for a sepia look. I can never find it in here. Post-crop vignette 1, post-crop vignette 2, no, no, no. Sepia tone. Now bear with me for a moment. Split toning. As you can see, that's not worked at all, and that's one of the main reasons why I absolutely hate the split toning. Oh no, the split toning, the sepia one in Lightroom. So they're going to be, as you can see, that's the before and after, and wow, the difference it makes. The blacks really cast the shadows into the chins and the eyes, and yeah, and how do people show it? Show the how they show the edits. That's the before and after the colour one. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that, so I'll just hide that for a minute. As you can see, when we played with the histogram by taking it down, we've added more darkness and more black to the image, and this is definitely apparent when you start looking at where the shadows are in the image. If I move that down, we've also brought a lot more detail back into the patterns on the dress. You'll see that is such places like on the face, around the lips, under the chin. You've really added in some more darkness, and then combining that with like playing with the exposure. What else do we do? Exposure and your fill light and your recovery. You just created a really powerful image, and the same goes for the black and white as well. So these are my edits. If you like the screen flow, please let me know in the comments down below. If you liked it, please leave me a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week.